on behalf of Leah is her friend Doris Faulkner.
I'm one of Leah's family. I think that there may be some others in the audience. She helped raise many of the Anchorage children. She was almost always constantly in touch with some of them, the parents, and she was very interested in how they progressed and what they did. She never had any children of her own and never asked her why. But one day, just not too long ago before she died, she turned to me and she said, you know, her husband Chester, had diabetes very severely, and they felt that they couldn't have children. But like I say, there are a lot of them out here. They had a celebration for her in her 90s, a birthday party, and some of the young people that she worked with, some of the parents, some of the people from APU, people from the organizations came just to celebrate and to honor Leah, an incredible lady. She had books. She made donations to Teaching University in Idaho. She'd grown up in Idaho on a ranch. Her mother had passed away, and she and her two brothers and her father lived on the ranch, and she was always getting in trouble for trying to do everything the boys did. And she carried it on up here. Her dear friend Margaret Hines' son, Warren, told me when I went to teach at Leah's school at Woodland Park that don't be deceived by this pretty little lady who always looked neat as a pin. She could hunt, fish, shoot. She could outdoors them all, and sure enough, that lady who always looked neat as a pin was a lover of our wilderness, and she and her husband developed a house on Kenai Lake. They had to drag things in, and her log in the cabin talks about coming down in the winter and the things that happened there on Kenai and the animals, and just this lady that was just absolutely amazing. Jean Ring was, some of you may know Jean, and Jean kept the teachers sort of together. Oh, when I taught at Woodland Park, I have to tell you this, I didn't have to tell my children to march well in the halls. All I had to do was to say, now, Mrs. Peterson is going to be out when you go through the halls. I hope you'll make her proud. And I didn't threaten them. I just said Mrs. Peterson would be there, and she talked to them, and she knew their names, and it was absolutely marvelous. That was about my 10th year of teaching, and I had never had a principal quite as wonderful as Leah. And Jean kept some of us together. We'd meet Leah every so often, and we had something that they wanted me to tell you about was Mocha Mondays down at Leah Peterson's Towers, which, by the way, when Chet passed away, Leah took over the management and the building of the Peterson Towers along with the people that were developing it. And she would often go, they had a restaurant, she would often go down to the restaurant and look out, and that's where her house had been for many years. But Mocha Mondays ended up being teachers from all over. We'd come up there on Monday and talk to Leah about politics until she was way into she was into her late 90s. She was up on politics. Sometimes I call her in the morning and say, did you read this in the paper? Oh, yes, and what do you think? And she studied books that came about what teaching schools produce good teachers. Very interesting. I never knew there were such things. And she donated to that as well as to APU. She wanted to be sure that they had good children, good teachers for the children in Alaska. She was a beautiful painter. I don't know how many of you knew she painted pictures, but she loved art and she loved beauty. And my children had, my grandchild, the 11-year-old now, he's 11, started coming up to Mocha Mondays, and Leah taught him how to use, as he grew, she taught him how to use the binoculars, how to wind her grandfather's clock, where the ships went, what the birds were like. Just an incredible lady. And as a tribute to her from many of her students, I'd like to tell you, we passed Peterson Towers the other day, and my grandson, who's 11, was in the back seat, and I said, oh, gee, I miss going to see Leah. And he said, I miss her too.